Hello and welcome to episode 4 of Financial Fitness. I'm your host, Donald Rand. Today we talk about the mid-month rebalance. What is it and why you need to do it? The mid-month rebalance. So what am I talking about? This comes up a lot in my coaching sessions and even just in everyday conversations. Matter of fact, it came up recently and just in a passing conversation. And I wanted to put this together anyway, but touching on it seemed a little bit more relevant after some recent coaching calls and even me participating with my coaching sessions, talking about how I can better serve my clients. This idea of the mid-month rebalance is something that a lot of us probably already do in our own ways. It's something that we do in our household, and it's something that I teach formally when I'm going through a coaching session when we get to that part of budgeting and of managing personal finances better. But I wanted to touch on it in the podcast just as an overall idea, maybe just a strategy that if you're already managing your monthly and your annual budgets, quarterly, annually, semi-annually, and you're kind of looking ahead, how does this mid-month rebalance strategy really come into play? How can you put it to work for you? So first and foremost, I want to go ahead and say that this probably is a little bit out of order. If you're hearing only this podcast and you don't have any context, then we haven't talked about what a budget is. And I actually haven't covered budgeting as a topic on this podcast. So if you're listening in order and you're following along with the conversation, this one's going to feel a little bit out of order. However, it's also coming out very timely as it is the middle of the month. I'll be releasing, or this episode should be releasing on the 15th. So if you hear it on the release date, you'll hear it right in the middle of the month in real time. Not live, obviously, but in real time. So as you're listening, it should be very applicable, and you can put these ideas, these strategies and techniques to use right away. And if not, if you're just, if you're picking this episode up, starting somewhere down the road or just listening to sound bites here and there, I don't know when you're going to hear it, but the principles will still work for you. So just listen through the whole podcast, listen to the idea, and put this to work in your budgeting practice, in your household, in the way that it works best for you. So the idea, the mid-month rebalance, what is it? So as I'm working through this process and we're putting these budgeting skills in place and really working on kind of flexing those financial muscles, right? The name of the podcast is Financial Fitness, and I got to that name because the idea that I was sort of working with when I was trying out names for the show had to do with exercise, and so the idea of finances and fitness kind of fit well together. And when I talk about it, and if I'm working one-on-one with somebody, I'll often use the analogy that we've got to exercise a new muscle, and sometimes it's a muscle we haven't used maybe ever. Sometimes we're recovering from an injury, and so we've got a little bit of atrophy to overcome. Other times it might be just a weakened muscle that we haven't been exercising correctly or haven't been exercising recently. And we all know that getting back into the gym, that those first few times, waking those muscles back up, or maybe using them for the first time, we get that soreness, right? And all of a sudden, it's hard to kind of get through those barriers. And so this idea of exercising these financial muscles and overcoming those initial pains, those recovery pains, is worth it even through the discomfort. And so I want you to be thinking about that as we're going through some of these discussions, not just with this episode, but all the episodes. The idea of financial fitness is something I probably should have explained in earlier episodes, but I'll touch on it, I'm sure, in future podcasts. But I wanted to touch on it today because this is a very applicable skill. And so far, if you are listening in order, I really haven't gotten into specific skills. I've talked about a lot of general concepts. I've tried to offer some encouragement and hopefully get you in the mindset to start really managing your finances intentionally and with the goal of improving not just your skill set and your fitness level as it relates to finance, but with the understanding that as that starts to improve, it can have a positive impact on your entire life. So that's really, that's where I'm at with the podcast. That's how I want it received. That's what I hope to be able to provide through this podcast and through these messages. And hopefully I'm doing that. That's where my heart is, and that's where my motivation is. So I hope that all of you listening are hearing that. And when we talk about this one today, it's going to be very, very applicable and very specific. So it may not even be as long, or who knows. I may find a little area that I want to expand on as I'm going through my notes, and it might be longer. But bear with me. We'll get through it, and I promise it'll be worth it. This is, like I said, a very applicable tool and something that you can take home and use right now, or as soon as you get home, or as soon as you get somewhere where you can interact with your budget that you're hopefully doing in some way. And as I've said before, there's a million different ways. There's infinite different ways to do a budget. What's important is that you actually do the budget, right? So back to the mid-month rebalance. Here's the basic principle. We're going to touch very intentionally the budget that we're working with. It's going to be a living document. What I mean by that is we're not just going to set up a budget that we use monthly and that we never edit and hope that it's always right month to month. That just doesn't work, right? Now you can use that as a starting point. You can have a template that you always start with, but with the idea of the mid-month rebalance, basically what I'm saying is I want you to very intentionally interact with your budget 2 formal times each month. And this is just a very basic principle that we teach. You're going to interact with it at the beginning of the month or at the very end of the month for the next month, right? So around the beginning, within that week, right? Hopefully in between pay periods, you're not waiting for a paycheck and then trying to figure out what to do with it. But then again, in the middle of the month. And most people have some sort of a regular pay cycle. Most commonly, that pay cycle is going to be every other week, or it's going to be twice a month, the 15th and the 30th, the 1st and the 15th, something like that. So most of us are dealing with either 26 checks every year, or pay cycles, right? Or 24 if we're twice a month, right? So 24, 26. Now, there may be some of you out there who are saying, not me, I get paid weekly or I get paid once a month. And this works for you too, because remember that in the mentality of managing a budget, we are managing proactively. What we are not doing is managing our money reactively. So what I don't want you to do is wait for the money to show up, see the money, then start figuring out what to do with it. I'd rather that we plan ahead, and that's what today's mid-month rebalance is really going to focus on. We plan ahead for those upcoming expenses based on the income that we expect to get. So here we are, it's the 15th of the month, and we're interacting with our budget, and we're taking a look, right? So what are we looking for? Well, we want to look for how we've done, how we performed so far in the first 15 days of the month. Then we want to look at the next 15 days and make sure that nothing has come up that we didn't plan for. But it's okay if it has, right? Because the idea is that we're proactive. So we set this budget up last month. So now, 15 days in, we want to see how well we're doing. And so maybe something has come up, right, that we didn't plan. And that's okay. We just need to take the opportunity now to adjust. So maybe we thought we were going to have a certain amount of money left over to get us through the rest of the month and income coming in. Maybe the income has gone up or down. Maybe it's the same. Maybe the expenses have gone up or down. Maybe they're the same. And the upcoming expenses, again, either up or down or the same, right? All of those scenarios are okay because this is a living document. You didn't do a bad job with your budget if an unknown expense or just an oversight causes you to be overspent on your budget at this point. And remember, if I'm overspent on the budget because I'm setting my accounts up with a little bit of padding, a little bit of overflow, right, and my floors are never zero, I don't ever run the risk of overdrawing accounts. And that's why we want to interact with our budget regularly. The budget is not the account balance. The budget is the cash flow, the activity of my day to day. And so I want to make sure that I'm planning very intentionally throughout the month to spread that money across my life, my way of life, and all of the different activities that I have to support in order to get me to that next pay cycle, right? And so that's the cash flow portion of the conversation, and the mid-month rebalance really focuses on that. Now, again, I want to stress here that what I'm not saying is that you live paycheck to paycheck and you're constantly just trying to maximize the value of the dollar and get as much as you can in as little amount of time as possible. And when we talk about spending and giving every dollar an assignment and a job, some of those jobs are savings. So what I'm not saying is that we're going to go in and we're going to spend this money and it's all going to be gone and you're going to be living paycheck to paycheck. So please don't hear that out of this conversation. What I am saying is you want to very intentionally and very regularly interact with your budget and look for opportunities to improve. Now, a couple of questions you should be asking yourself. Am I prioritizing my money correctly? Who is involved in this conversation? Do I have a planned, let's say you live in a family dynamic, right? Husband, wife, mother, father with kids. Who's involved in that conversation? I would encourage the entire family to be involved. What if you're single? Well, that's even easier. It's just you, right? But maybe you've got some close friends that you can use as accountability partners, especially if you're trying to go through a debt elimination scenario. Bring those people that will support you into that conversation and let them hold you accountable to some of those decisions and go through this process with somebody else in the room, because it's much less likely that if you do this together in a group, right, with trusted friends or family who will support you. This needs to be a healthy relationship, right? We want the right people in this conversation. Don't just go pick somebody up who you just met and invite them into a financial conversation. This is vulnerability time, and so you want to have somebody that you trust in the room, and that will hold you accountable. It's okay, right? It's okay for somebody to tell you no and remind you that you've got a longer term goal in mind. And in some cases, it may even be necessary, right? Family dynamics, husbands and wives out there, you can do that for each other. And if you aren't doing that, I would strongly encourage starting that conversation and having that regular interaction, because it's very healthy. Now, it can be very uncomfortable getting started, right? If you haven't done this regularly and one spouse is always managing the budget and the other spouse is always spending the money, and maybe that's worked, or at least you think it's been working for a while until you open the door for this conversation, and that can be challenging. It was in our house, and but we got over it, and now we have those conversations. Honestly, in passing, we'll have regular conversations about our budget with respect to the budget almost every day in our house, because there's such a fluid dynamic. Things are changing, jobs are changing, income sources are changing. Maybe a sale of something has happened. Maybe unexpected income or cost has come up. Pets are a great example. And anybody who has kids, we all know, right? If you've got a house, a vehicle, a kid, or a pet, you have an unplanned expense every single month. I hope everybody just chuckled a little bit, sitting in your car or at your desk or wherever you're listening to this. It made me laugh a little bit. If you've got a house, a car, a dog or a cat, some kind of pet or a kid, you have got an unplanned expense every single month. And that's another reason to do this mid-month rebalance. So, anybody that's out there thinking, well, I check my account balance all the time, right? I always look at the account balance. I make sure I'm not overdrawn. And that's good. You want to make sure you're not overdrawn. But if you're focused on not being overdrawn, if that's really how you're managing to your quote unquote budget, then the only thing you're really trying to protect yourself from is spending all your money and running out. What you're not doing is you're not actively planning and spending and saving in really intentional ways to maybe get yourself out of debt, save for, education or retirement or a future home purchase or upgrade or renovation, right? So we want to identify these things. We want to look long term, but we also want to be paying attention to the day to day. And the way that we do that is we do this mid-month rebalance. Now, the other part of this, as I'm getting toward the end of this idea and this concept, is not irrelevant, and I don't want to gloss over it, but I'm probably going to go pretty quick here because it ties more into the actual budgeting process. But the other piece of the mid-month rebalance, so part one was we're just going to revisit this month's budget. Well, part two is we're going to start to look at next month's budget. And now we're going to start planning and prepping and getting ahead, right? So now it's that intentional focus. It's that proactive approach to budgeting. So we're going to use all the same rules and we're going to start building out next month's or maybe the next 2 or 3 months of budgets. If we have steady income and we have steady expenses, and again, if you're a homeowner with kids and pets, life goes in. It's seasonal, right? Seasonal volatility, but it definitely goes in a very, at least our experience, it goes in a very consistent fashion. Now, there's always those unknowns, and we all talk about how busy we get and how much of a whirlwind life can be, and we're busy, 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 but at the same time, we're fairly consistent. We know on Monday what we're doing. We know on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We know what those activities are. We've got, our kid participates in a Ninja Warrior camp. And so he goes on to Ninja Warrior every Thursday, and we pay for that every month. And so that's a known expense and a known activity. Now, if he breaks his arm, that's unplanned, right? We don't plan for those kinds of things, but we do have money set aside for the unknowns. So you could argue that we do plan. We don't expect, our son to go break his arm at ninja training, but if he does, we know how to handle it. We've got a plan in place to be able to, handle that unknown expense, but it's going to blow that month's budget, right? We're going to have this unknown miscellaneous expense that was unplanned for that month, but we have resources to, and hopefully insurance is going to help for that particular example. But you get it, right? We've all got that kind of volatility, but also consistency to our lives. So, don't force yourself to be so proactive and so meticulous in your budgeting that you plan to keep planning and you never stop planning, and so you never move into the action phase of planning, and so you just keep getting ready to get ready and you never actually end up with a budget. Don't get stuck in that analysis paralysis. This is something that I identify with very well and I've struggled with for most of my life. I want to know where every little detail is all the time, and as a result, I end up overdoing the planning side of things, and it takes too much time, probably too much rigor and resources designated to that or committed to that. But I'm a planner, and I used to not own that. I do now. I'm a planner, and I'll admit it. But don't let planning get in the way of allowing you to execute and manage and hold yourselves accountable to a budget. You're never going to get it right, and that's the beauty of it. Matter of fact, as I was preparing for this, and I'm glad I just said it, I wasn't reading my notes, but I just glanced down and I wrote that in big, bold, highlighted text on my show notes, was that you're never going to get it right. It's perfection is the enemy. You heard that episode. I think that was episode 2. So we're not going to try to be perfect. We're just going to try to be consistent here. We're going to keep interacting with the budget. We're going to keep updating the budget. And that really is the magic in the process. Is as long as you're involved, as long as you're engaged, as long as you're informed, and you're looking at it, you're interacting with it, you understand where the money's going, you have a plan for where the money is going, and you apply these concepts to both the financial side and the non-monetary side of your lives, then your entire life tends to improve as a result of that. You start getting more organized in other areas of your life, and you start finding opportunity to improve other aspects of your life based on the way the finances are now improving. And so now it kind of frees your mind up and opens your eyes to a little bit wider view. Now that you're not so focused on, I hope we make it to the end of the month, or what are we going to do when we run out of money? Once we get to the other side of that conversation, what other doors are available to you? What other opportunities are out there that you can now see, because you don't have this thing called finances in the way. You don't have this thing called debt in the way, right? So we're trying, the whole focus, this entire show, by the way, is going to be focused on living on the other side of debt. And so this is just one of the tools, one of the ways that we get there. So I hope all that makes sense. 2 big key points here is intentional and regular interaction with your budget at the beginning and at the middle, or at the end and at the middle of each month, and updating both current and future months. And look as far out as you feel comfortable looking. Go ahead and plan out the next 12 months if you can. Guess what? It won't be right. Something is going to change. I guarantee it, and that's okay. But because we're interacting with it regularly, you're going to be able to make those little micro adjustments along the way, and you're going to take a lot of stress out of your life if you can apply these principles. So go do a mid-month rebalance, interact with your budget, Download the Every Dollar app if you haven't already. It's available from the Ramsey Solutions or Ramsey Plus website, and give it a try. Even if you don't get the app, you know what? Use your spreadsheet or use the tools that are available from your online banking app or web page that you're using. However you're interacting with your budget, you don't have to use the tools that I'm recommending. Whatever tools you're already using, you're already comfortable with, this works with absolutely everything. It's just a proactive approach. We're going to interact twice a month, very intentionally, probably more, but these two interactions, if done consistently, will definitely improve your financial fitness going forward. So give it a try and let me know how it goes. So that's it, the mid-month rebalance. A few things that I want you to remember before you start to apply or as you start to apply is when to get started. And hopefully it's obvious, and I kind of covered this by saying anybody can take this home and use it right now, but the answer to that is start now. There's absolutely no reason that you can't take the concepts, even if you don't have some of the more formal tools that I mentioned, and go home and do a mid-month check-in right now. You can start to think ahead. You can start to make adjustments in the existing month, in the current month, and you can just be that much more prepared for what's in front of you. So get started now. And remember, there's always going to be unplanned expenses. So even though they're not planned, doesn't mean that you can't be proactive with how you manage them. So identify them, check in mid-month, end of month, regular interaction, and when these things happen, make the adjustments. And it's never perfect. Budgeting is a fluid, ongoing process, like so many other aspects of our lives. So just don't leave this one out, right? Budgeting is just one more thing that we want to manage proactively, that we want to manage intentionally. And that's a word you're going to hear on this show a lot. We want to be intentional. We want to be informed. We want to go after this thing in a very proactive way. And then a couple final points. Do this together. Even if you live alone, find somebody that you can work on your budget with. Somebody that you trust, somebody that will give you honest feedback. We've all got those friends. We don't typically share finances just socially in our culture, but you have people that you do interact with in a way and have a trust level with that you can share your finances and other more sensitive aspects of your life with. So find those people. Families, do this together. Singles, find a partner and do this as a team. Find some people that can really help support you through this process. And I'll go a step farther in saying find someone that you can help support. So even if you're not the one looking, maybe you know somebody that needs an accountability partner, needs somebody to support them through this. So ask your friends if they're looking, make yourself available. And if you're looking, decide who you want to engage and approach with this idea and see if they're comfortable being your accountability partner. And then I'll leave you with this final quote and idea, which is find simplicity on the other side of complexity. So this is actually this is an original quote. It's something that came out of my professional life, and we tried to always simplify. Whenever you're approached or whenever you're looking at a complex situation, the only way to break it down into a manageable, tolerable level that you can actually go after with conviction and authority is to simplify it. So don't approach your budget with such a level of complexity. I talked about me being a planner, and I would put together very complex budgets that I would never put into practice because they covered too many things. They were too hard to keep up. They weren't sustainable. So don't do that to yourselves. Oversimplify it, get it done, put it in place, check in, make those adjustments, and just keep going. If it's not sustainable, you won't do it. Consistency, sustainability, simplicity, that's how we win. Thanks for listening.